Welcome to the sharing economy. This is a sketchnote animation as well as an actual meta-sketchnote, meaning that it is a sketchnote about sketchnoting. So I'm really going to cover two different things: the sharing economy, and I'm also going to discuss the way in which sketchnoting itself can be used to help organize thoughts. So we'll start with the idea of the space of the page, which is really just how do we leverage the page to help us organize our thoughts. So I've sketched a vertical line, which I'm using really as a timeline for the before and after. And while timelines are normally horizontal, they can be used or created vertically. So let's start with the before, but first let's just describe what's going to happen in the after. And we're going to use just the 5 W's and the 1 H, the who, what, why, where, when, and how, to help us structure that. But we will begin by actually going into the what I would call period before the sharing economy. And that is the sort of social nature of humans, how we've evolved to be social creatures, whether that's explaining something like the configuration of the stars in the sky, the Big Dipper, or let's say, for example, sharing talent. In the case of a musician, could be not only their skill, but also the stories told through song. Even an author is ultimately using his or her book as a way to disseminate information, whether that's history, technology, etc. A storyteller, while telling his or her narrative, is helping to share information. And even situations like the Amish, who will raise barns together collectively in a community, they're essentially sharing knowledge and, of course, sharing their labor. Something as simple as pointing out directions is an obvious form of sharing, whereas when we're teaching somebody to get better at a particular thing like sports, through coaching, that's a form of the sharing economy. Potluck, or potlatch, as the Native Americans referred to it, as a form of sharing. And certainly recipes are one way in which we encode knowledge in order to be able to share it. So these are the forms of knowledge sharing that precede what we now call the sharing economy. And again, we're using the structure of the page, the space of the page, to help us not only organize our thoughts, but also to help pull them out of our heads. Another way of thinking about the sharing economy is gift culture. So something that has been created by hand, let's say a cutting board, has greater perceived value to most of us than, say, something that's been purchased in a big box store. Not to put down Walmart or any of the big box stores, but there's just something inherently more connected to our kind of heart and soul when we get something that has been made by hand as opposed to factory produced. And so we think of those things as coming not only from our brains and our minds, but also, as I said earlier, coming from us as kind of sharing individuals. And so gifts that are handmade just seem to have greater value than things that are purchased, because things that are purchased are generally factory made and far more anonymous. So even when we think of something like open source technology, whether it's Linux or some other form of openly shared technology, it's often thought of as technology for the people, by the people. Okay, so we filled up one full half of the sketchnote, and now we're over on the right-hand side, and just by sketching a simple arc, we can create a kind of radiating pattern. So on the right-hand side, we're looking at the the 5 W's and the 1 H. And rather than starting with who, which went up at the very top, I realized that what is actually easier to describe. And so the whatness of the sharing economy could be car sharing in the form of Uber and Lyft, or house sharing in the form of Airbnb, knowledge sharing in the form of Web 2.0, and so on and so forth. All of these ways in which projects like Kickstarter help to crowdfund a project, even meal sharing. These are ways in which the sharing economy propels itself forward. So who's using or who's involved in the sharing economy? Well, there are, of course, teachers and students. There are scientists, lots of initiatives that use the sharing economy to help really speed up the research. Travelers, business travelers, visitors to foreign countries or even foreign cities. People are using bike share programs in urban centers and university towns. Even the creative individuals trying to get projects like films or books kickstarted are really leveraging the dynamics of the sharing economy. So why are they using the sharing economy? Well, part of it is largely driven by cost. It's a lot easier to fund something, whether it's a project or whether it's a trip, through the sharing economy than it is through more traditional forms. When we think of the sharing economy, we can go back to someone as old as Thomas Jefferson, who used the analogy of the candle. When I use my candle to light the wick of someone else's candle, I'm not diminishing the strength of my candle. In other words, the fire used to ignite another candle does not make my fire less. Where is the sharing economy happening? Well, again, because educators and students are actively involved in it, it's happening in schools. It's happening in urban centers, whether through car sharing or bike sharing or house sharing. These are creating networks that allow us to do things in ways that we couldn't do before. When is it happening? Well, pretty much 24/7, so long as you have a network. So this is definitely something that is crucial to the sharing economy. Now, I've sketched the word connection much larger to, again, help activate that word, using the space of the page as a way to keep me focused and also communicate. The ways in which the sharing economy are happening, as I said earlier, is largely dependent on the network, whether that's a mobile phone or a tablet, a phablet, laptop, even a traditional desktop computer. But all of these rely heavily on having an actual network connection. So now, the act of embellishing is also a form of review. So simply by going in and darkening or highlighting or darkening aspects of the sketchnote, I'm not only serving to make it easier for others to look at it and understand it, but I'm also using this as a form of review. It allows me to kind of see the main points and go back in. In this case, I actually corrected the E in sharing, which had been missing. Fortunately, I had a hyphen in there and I could catch that. But this process, well, I'm not going to go through absolutely everything. It's really a form of review and consolidation. I'm looking over the points, darkening those things that are the most important, again, using creating a kind of hierarchy, and also in the process rethinking through that. In some instances, I'll actually add some additional information rather than simply just embellishing what's there, although for the most part what you're seeing me do right now is really just embellishing the existing terms on there. So as I blast through this, I'm hitting the 5 W's, reconnecting some things by darkening some of the arrows. I'm going in and I'm adding some shade and shadow. And I'm generally, as I said, going back in and kind of reviewing it. As I review it, I'll actually start to think of new things, and I'll add those in like this as I move along. So not only is that embellishment a form of review, but it's also an opportunity to go ahead and add in or connect things that I might not have seen when I was first doing it. So I'm just blasting through this, highlighting and creating some stronger hierarchies, making sure that those main points are really being emphasized, and again going in and just making it easier and more engaging to look at. So it's a process of embellishment as a form of review, and by the time I'm done, I will have created something that serves as really just step one. Once I've done this, I'm able to go in and really start thinking about the next phase of this story, and I'm using the structure of the document, space of the page. I'm using connectors, frames, icons, and type.